In a quiet corner of rural Nebraska, 62-year-old Thomas Granger lived a humble life, working the same farmland his family had cultivated for 5 generations. With calloused hands and quiet pride, Thomas wasn't one to get involved in politics. But when an envelope bearing the presidential seal arrived, even he paused. President Donald Trump was set to tour farming communities devastated by drought and the fallout of trade disputes. Thomas, regarded as the soul of Harvest Valley, had received a personal invitation to meet him. The town buzzed with anticipation. Reporters rolled in. Flags lined the dusty main road, and neighbors tidied up their barns as if preparing for royalty. Yet Thomas remained grounded. "I'll listen to what he has to say," he remarked without much fanfare. His daughter Abby, a 28-year-old single mom and schoolteacher, urged him. "Dad, this could change things, for the farm and for us." Thomas responded thoughtfully, "Maybe so. But sometimes it's not about what's offered. It's about what's truly needed." When the big day came, helicopters rumbled overhead. Secret Service agents swept through fields. A podium was set up in front of Thomas's iconic red barn. As the black SUV arrived, Thomas adjusted his worn-out hat, unaware that the moment ahead would not only catch a president off guard, it would ripple across the nation. President Trump stepped out to cheers. Surrounded by aides, security, and flashing cameras, he strode confidently toward Thomas with his hand extended. The crowd quieted. Thomas stared at the offered hand, not just as a gesture from the president, but as one from a figure of both hope and controversy. Instead of accepting it, he took a step back. Gasps broke through the silence. Reporters raised their cameras. Trump's smile faltered. "You're not going to shake my hand?" Trump asked. Thomas stood firm. "Mr. President, I've got no quarrel with you. But before I shake your hand, there's someone I need you to meet." Trump raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." Thomas pointed toward the barn behind them. "Before that handshake, I want to introduce you to someone. Not a politician, not a mogul. Just someone who kept this country running quietly, without recognition." Perplexed but intrigued, Trump nodded. "Lead the way." Cameras followed as Thomas guided the president into the dim barn. Inside, seated on a wooden chair, was 90-year-old Edith Granger, Thomas's mother, a widow of World War II and lifelong farmer's wife. She stood slowly, her frail frame filled with quiet pride. "This," Thomas said, "is the woman who ran this farm when my father went to war. She raised 5 children on grit and prayer. She never asked for anything, but now she needs someone to listen." Trump looked into her eyes. She didn't offer a smile, just a calm strength. The handshake was forgotten. The crowd leaned in. "What are you asking for, Mr. Granger?" the president asked, his tone gentler now. Thomas glanced at the cameras, then at the president. His voice carried emotion. "I'm not here for subsidies, Mr. President. I'm not here for tax cuts or a photo for your campaign." He looked to his mother. "I want you to listen, really listen, to what rural America has been screaming into the wind for decades. Listen to the farmers selling off their last cattle. Listen to the teachers working nights. Listen to the veterans who served proudly and now die in poverty." The field went still. "I want you to come to our table. No suits, no cameras. Just people, talking honestly. Because if you want my handshake, Mr. President, it's going to cost you your ears." Trump paused. He glanced at his aides, then back at Thomas. "Is that what you're asking for? A conversation?" Thomas nodded. "An honest one." Then Edith spoke softly. "It's not about sides, son. It's about seeing people." Trump broke into a slight smile. "Well, I wasn't expecting this." And then he said what no one thought he would. "Then let's talk, right now." Still, no handshake. Inside the modest farmhouse, cameras were turned away. At the kitchen table sat Trump, Thomas, Abby, and Edith. A pot of coffee steamed in the middle, surrounded by chipped mugs. The silence was real, unscripted. Thomas started. This year we lost 3 farms. Not to laziness, but to a broken system. Loans too big. Profits too small. Help never arrives in time. Abby added, our school's funding was cut. I teach 3 grades in 1 room. My students come to school hungry. Tweets won't fix that. Trump leaned forward, listening. No script, no speeches, just attention. Then Edith spoke. I've voted since Truman, but I've stopped believing Washington remembers us. You say you love this country? Then love all of it, even the places breaking quietly. Trump nodded slowly. You think I don't care? Thomas replied. I think you've never looked closely enough to care. For a moment, the president was simply a man, sitting at a table worn by decades of meals, stories, and struggles. Finally, he said, all right, let's make something happen. But I don't want this to stay in this room. Let's take these voices to Washington. Thomas narrowed his eyes. I'll hold you to that. Trump extended his hand again. Thomas hesitated, then said with a faint grin, not yet. The next morning, national headlines weren't about a handshake, but about a president sitting down with a farmer's family and truly listening. That evening, a team from the White House returned to the Granger home. The president wants to host a rural town hall right here in Harvest Valley, an aide announced. He wants real voices, farmers, teachers, shop owners to speak openly. He'll be here to respond. Thomas blinked. You're serious? We are. He says this story's not over. Within days, the local high school gym was transformed. Invitations went out. Families traveled from neighboring states, some skeptical, others cautiously optimistic. Abby looked at her father. You think he'll actually show up? Thomas dusted off his boots. He said he'd listen. Let's make sure he hears everything. What followed wasn't just another event. It marked the beginning of something far greater. The gym buzzed with conversation. Locals, farmers, cashiers, nurses, and students filled the seats. Cameras were placed in the back, but this night wasn't about politics. It was about people. President Trump entered quietly. No music, no fanfare. He nodded toward Thomas, then took a seat at a simple round table. This isn't a rally, he began. It's a conversation. Who'd like to start? A hesitant hand rose. Angela Rivera, a widow and mother of 4, spoke. My husband died of cancer last year. We couldn't afford treatment. I now work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. No one helped, not the hospital, not the government. Silence followed. Then Mason, a teenager, stood. I want a farm like my dad, but he says there's no future. He's thinking about selling the land. What do I do? The room filled with voices, raw, unfiltered, real. Trump listened. He asked questions. His staff took notes. By the night's end, something rare had emerged, trust. And still, Thomas had not offered his hand. Outside, not everyone was satisfied. A small protest gathered. One sign read, too little, too late. Another, words won't feed us. Thomas noticed a young woman among them. Her eyes were intense. Her sign handmade. My grandpa lost his farm. I lost my future. He approached. That's an honest sign, he said calmly. She was surprised. You're the farmer who wouldn't shake his hand. Thomas nodded. Still haven't. Why not? She asked. Because we've gotten too used to gestures. A handshake's easy. Real change takes work. She lowered her sign. I'm Lily. My grandpa's name was George. He always said, the soil remembers everything. Thomas smiled. He was right. They stood quietly as the crowd dispersed. And for the first time in years, Lily felt seen, not as a protester, but as a person. Back at home, Edith sat by the fireplace, pen in hand. Her hands trembled as she wrote, "Dear Mr. President, I'm 90. I've lived through wars, dust storms, and recessions. I've seen leaders rise and fall, but never have I seen a time when people stopped listening to each other like this. We didn't grow this country through blame. We grew it through work. If you want to fix it, start where real things grow, the soil." She handed the letter to Thomas. "Give this to him." "You think he'll read it?" he asked. "He sat at our table," she replied. "I think he already has." A week later, the White House called. "The president wants to see you in D.C., he read Edith's letter." Thomas hesitated. "I'm not a suit-wearing man. I don't give speeches." "You don't have to," the aide said. "Just bring your voice." Abby urged him. "Dad, this isn't politics. This is visibility." With Edith's blessing and a borrowed jacket, Thomas boarded a plane for the first time. From Nebraska's fields to D.C.'s marble halls, he brought only one thing with him: the truth. And still, no handshake. Before leaving, Thomas scooped a handful of soil from his land and placed it in a glass jar. At the Capitol, aides were confused when he pulled it out. "This," he said, "this is what feeds America. Not statistics, not sound bites, soil and sweat." Later, in a private meeting, he handed the jar to Trump. "You want my handshake?" Thomas said. "Then make sure this never stops mattering." Trump held it in silence. "No lobbyist ever handed me dirt before," he said softly. The next morning, Trump surprised the nation with a press conference. Standing beside Thomas, he announced the creation of the Heartland Voices Council, a bipartisan group of rural citizens advising the White House on